Hey. It's always such a bittersweet moment because it's like, wow, we've had such an amazing weekend, but we're on our last leg now. We're on the last stretch. But so happy to be here. It's been so awesome, right, Polly? Like just so much to think about and take home with, and it's just been super inspiring and informative. So yeah, thanks again to everyone. Y'all know the drill probably by now. If you've been here with us, just take an extra long break because we're gonna kind of run through the essentials and what we are before we bring on our amazing next guest, Denise, who I'm so excited to hear from. But yeah, let's jump into who we are. So the essentials, free photography classes. I am Danielle Villasana. I'm an independent photojournalist, but also a community team member of the Everyday Projects, which is basically using photography to do really cool things, like combating harmful misperceptions and using photography as a tool to do that. And I am here with the amazing one and only best co-host in the entire universe, not AI generated. Okay, I'll stop making AI jokes. Polly Irungu, who is the amazing founder of Black Women Photographers.
I can't. Yeah, I am a real figure. Hi, everyone. I'm Polly. I'm the founder of Black Women Photographers. Like Danielle, we do incredible work in this industry to help further the members in our community with providing them, whether it's free resources like this or actual grants and resources and opportunities to get hired, whatever it is to further their practice. That is core to what we do. And this is one of my favorite projects that we do every year, working alongside Danielle, an incredible Everyday Projects team that are behind the scenes, making sure this goes seamlessly and smooth for all of you guys tuning in from literally all around the world. And so if you haven't already or you want to do it again, if you're just joining us for the second half of day 2, feel free to drop in the chat where you're tuning in from. It's always so cool to see where everybody else is in the world. And these classes have been made free because of our incredible partner, Photo Wings. They are a nonprofit organization dedicated to utilizing the power of photography to further deep thinking, communication, and action. Their extensive online content and Photo Wings outreach programs have myriad educational applications and possibilities like this one that you all have been joining us with this weekend.
Yes, and Polly mentioned the people working tirelessly
Or
behind
maybe
the scenes.
tired.
Yeah, I know, right? Let's go. We can do this. And I just want to give them a shout out. Lots of love and hugs. That's Rebecca Gibeon, who's also on the community team of the Everyday Projects, as well as Austin Merrill, who, along with Peter DeCampo, are the co-founders of the Everyday Project. So they're here. They're making sure everything's flowing smoothly. They're giving us lots of love to Polly and I and the panelists. So thank you all so much for being here. And yes, so thank you, everyone. As you can see here, we've had an amazing weekend. We still have 2 speakers to round out this amazing, incredible, and inspiring weekend. And if
I'm
you have somehow,
doing a great job. I've been checking, like, I've been looking online every now and the social media tags. Y'all are doing an amazing job sharing the insights you're learning. Somebody just, dropped a comment, sharing their reflection from Tara's presentation. Like, keep it coming. Let the speakers know that you're enjoying this. Let your fellow photographers, storytellers know about these amazing free resources that we provide every year and keep tagging and bookmarking us on social.
yes, and just another little reminder that if you missed it or you want to watch them again, the videos will be available online in perpetuity, in also Spanish and French. So please come back to those websites, keep an eye and ear out, and share those videos with your peers. So yeah, make sure you're following us. And with that,
With that, virtual drum roll. One of my favorite people ever, Miss Danese Kenon. Oh my goodness, I really hope I say this to everybody I have to introduce because I really, truly hope I'm doing you all justice. Because how do you summarize decades of just impactful work experience in 1 minute? You really cannot. But here, with that said, I'm going to try. We are ready to jump into class 3 for day 2 with Danese Kenon. We're rounding it off with a conversation about exploring the camera lens even further to unpack the integral, crucial role of the photo editor. Starting off, Denise, who is currently the managing editor of visuals at the Philadelphia Inquirer. That says she has nearly 2 decades of experience, including as a photographer, editor, assistant managing editor, and deputy director of video multimedia at publications across from the U.S., from the Indianapolis Star to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette to the Tampa Bay Times. And she teaches journalism and leadership at the Kalish, at the Eddie Adams Workshop, and to NABJ students. Today, we're going to soak up all her knowledge of decades of experience on the ins and outs of pursuing a career in photo editing, as well as best practices for editing, sequencing, and captioning, and learning about what it looks like to have a career in this realm. You know, there's so many different various roles within the industry, and we're going to just look at photo editor as one, but also what she looks for in a photographer when assigning assignments. Whether you're curious about transitioning from photographer to editor, or you want to know more about how to put your best foot forward in the field to get hired, Denise will try to answer all your questions. Thank you so much for joining us, Denise.
Thank you guys for having me. I just have to say, in this new era of my life, I'm in the auntie stage, and I'm so proud of you guys. I'm like beaming with joy over here. You guys are doing amazing work. And I appreciate the efforts that have gone on behind the scenes for this, because this is a lot to put together and dealing with all of us and our schedules. So thank you so much for having us, but thank you even more for doing this. So in my auntie era, thank you so much. I'm so very proud of you guys. Let me see here if I can share my screen. All right. Can you guys see that? Give me a thumbs up.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. All right, so I'm just going to get started. My name is Denise, and what we're going to talk about today is how I got here, some questions to consider, the actual job, working with photo editors, and some leadership tips, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. If I start to talk too fast, somebody slow me down. And then, so what to expect is kind of some new insights and strategies, gain clarity on the role that I'm doing and roles like this. Some of the right questions to ask if you want to get into this work, and kind of some things that will help your leadership as you move forward. So I am Danese Kenon. I run the photo and video department at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I also have diversity, equity, and inclusion within my portfolio, and I do a few other things, but those are the main 3 pillars of the work that I do here at the Inquirer. So for this conversation, we're going to be talking about photo editor in the sense of journalism. There are a lot of names for photo editors now, right? Like we see it a lot as in corporate America as creative director. We see photo editing skills, you know, in things like content management, visual strategist, digital asset manager. But for this conversation, we're talking about photo editor in the way of journalism as it relates to newspapers, magazines, wire services, and that kind of thing. So 1999, right? There was a song about it, I'm sure Prince had it. A lot was going on. I was a student, and I started my journey at the National Association of Black Journalists. And my first degree is in English because I really, really enjoyed reading. And I did not think that photography and photojournalism was an actual career path. Like I wasn't exposed to that. But I had a teacher at Virginia State University who noticed what I loved doing, which was photography. And photography was my passion. I worked at the student newspaper, I worked at the yearbook, but I didn't know there was a career path that went there. So she started sending me to NABJ conventions. She started sending me to go shoot assignments, and I started to learn about these things. So this year, 1999, I went to Unity. I don't know how many of you guys remember Unity, but it was all of the groups together. So it was NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists. It was the Asian journalists. It was Hispanic. It was Native American. And we all had a place together in this one conference. And it was amazing. But that was the last version of Unity that I know of. And this photo was a photo that they took in the student newspaper. And I remember thinking, I will never be anybody's boss. I don't know why they put that headline there. Well, who actually knew, right? You don't really know what you don't know. But those were some of the first exposures that I had to editing, to photography as a career. And then I went to the Poynter Institute of Journalism. Back in my day, that was a really big thing for you to go to Poynter Institute. And on the right is Kenny Irby, and he ran a visual program there. And if you can see me way over there hiding behind the pillar, I was very shy and outspoken. Those days are long gone. I won't say outspoken. I was shy and I didn't really know what to say or how to say it. And so I kind of was hiding my voice. And so I learned really what the responsibility of photojournalism was and is. I learned about ethics. I learned so much in that 6-week fellowship program. And it was for journalists of color, for every facet of journalism. It was copy editing, it was design, it was all kinds of things. And it only happened one time. And I learned so much, not only from the experience, but I learned also from the journalists there. And I thought, oh my God, these people are amazing. This is what I want to do. So I did several internships and fellowships, and I landed my first job at the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. In this photograph, I was preparing to leave my first job. I was headed to Syracuse University to study photography more intensely. As you know, at the newspaper, you don't always have time to really slow down and actually study. You know, what I had was a gift that people were nurturing, but I didn't have a whole like foundations that a lot of photojournalists have when they go to, you know, Ohio or Western Kentucky. I didn't have that. I was good with people, and I was good with telling stories, but I wanted more. So I went to Syracuse University for their master's program. And then I went right to the Indianapolis Star as a staff photographer immediately after. So it took we're talking about a decade or so of time and working through a lot of things. And I had a great time at this job. I did daily news and sports. I did big events. I did projects. You know, this was a lot of fun for me, and I loved this job. And I learned so much, you know. So a typical shift for me was 12 to 8:30 or 1 to 10, like Tuesday, Wednesday through Sunday or something like that. I didn't have weekends off. They didn't believe in giving young people weekends off back then. And so I did what was available, and I enjoyed it, and I learned so much from the people that I worked with. But the industry was changing all the time, and a lot of people were being laid off. You know, after 2008, you had this big economy downfall, and a lot of people were being laid off all the time, and it was nerve-wracking and scary. And so what helped me pivot during this changing industry is just being open to change. I had zero interest in learning video, like zero. I did not, I could care less about video. I wanted to be with photography, and that was it. That's all I wanted to do. But I had to be open to it. Back then, there were no classes that were, you go and you take a class. You know, there was like Platypus or one more, but they were expensive. And all newspapers at that time were downsizing. And so there was not money available to do this kind of thing. And so it's kind of like, what do you do? So I sat behind a photographer named Sam Ritchie and Bob Shear, and I watched them edit. And that's how I learned how to edit video. Is literally sitting behind photographers who knew how to do that skill. And those photographers did not gatekeep, they shared with me, you know? And so it's this feeling of you have to stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? And learning new skills and studying the craft. What is the craft doing now? So I had to be responsible for my own growth. That newspaper was not investing in specific photographers or specific departments. They were investing in trying to keep themselves alive at the time, right? So you have to consider, what is it that I need to do to grow, to not only maintain this position, but to get the next position. I'm going to take a pause there. You guys okay? Am I talking too fast? I can't tell.
You're
Yes?
doing great.
Great.
Okay, cool.
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. Great. Okay, so those are the things that I had to do to really, make sure I was still in the business. So we went through a lot of changes and we went through a lot of layoffs. And so I then became kind of a hybrid. So I was doing some management, I was doing some projects. I was doing a lot of video. They were taking me off of the street to do video and to do sponsored content, sponsored editorial content. And I was working across the newsroom. So what I was learning was how to communicate a visual language to other people, right? And trying to figure that out at this young age was a lot. And so in this photo, we were working on a sponsored piece about veterans, and behind me is Dawn Mitchell, and she was a librarian. And so we collaborated together, because the title they give you is the title they give you, but the work is the work. And so who do you need to get the work done? And Dawn is amazing at research. And so she became a part of this project. And the gentleman on the right is Ted Green, and he was a reporter at the time. So we were collaborating, trying to make new things out of old stories, essentially. So this went on for a while, where I was doing projects and project-based work, and then the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette called. And what do I do now? I was a part of a great team of journalists. We had all survived all these layoffs. When I got there, there was close to 30 people in our department. And now we were down to about 13. I had a great boss. Mike Fender was a great boss. But was I ready to be somebody else's boss? Was I ready to be a full-time manager? These are things I really had to kind of consider in taking this kind of job, and the position seemed so high. It would be the assistant managing editor of visuals. What does that mean? I don't even know. So these are the questions that I had to say, like, what do I do now? And what helped me in that journey is mentorships. And I think, Polly and I were talking about this earlier. Polly mentioned it before we went to commercial break, or before the break. Relationships are everything. The relationships that you build and the mentorships that you cultivate play a critical role in your growth. And I mean that both ways. And so, while I was a mentor, while I had mentors, and while I am a mentor now, a lot of my mentees are now mentoring me in other things, right? It's a back and forth. And so it is critical for your growth in a lot of ways. I was able to ask my mentors questions that I couldn't ask anyone else. So questions I had to ask myself: if I'm not a photographer, who am I? Right? At the time, I didn't realize how much of my cultural identity was caught up, or my actual personal identity was caught up in what I did. If I'm not a photographer, who am I really? Will I still love this job that I love so much? Am I going to make a good leader? What makes a good team? If I'm going to lead a team, how do I do that? What makes a good team? So if you're thinking about doing this work, please consider these questions, and take them very seriously, because you go from a life of being an independent photographer, where you're on the street, you're in isolation, you're doing the work with the help of your editors and some colleagues, to all of a sudden not doing the work at all. That is jarring. And I did not know how much of a major change that was until I made that change. Questions my mentors asked me, because my mentors are kind of my thought partners, if you will, right? Does this workplace value the visual voice? Great question, right? What commitment do they have to you to continue to help you grow, right? Are you in a space where they're going to continue to help you grow, Or is your staff, is your newsroom going to go past you and all of a sudden no one actually needs you anymore because the technology has passed you? What is their commitment to helping you grow? That's an important question. And what is the leadership culture? Culture is so important. I can't stress that enough. If you're going into a new newsroom, if you're going into a new job of any type, the culture of that job is really important. It's hard to change culture. It's really hard to change culture, right? And this is a photo I have of two women who I love dearly. They've been around since I was a kid, and they've seen me in all iterations. But it's really important to cultivate these relationships. I'm not just calling Akili, who is on the left in this photo, and saying, hey, what do I do here? You know, calling her back to back with these questions without asking her, how are you doing? How is your day going, right? Because it's an exchange. You're developing and you're cultivating a relationship, right? And then there's Michelle on the right. Michelle, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think, right? And she's going to give it to you straight. If anybody knows Michelle, you know she's going to give it to you straight. This is what I'm thinking, right? And Michelle is with the New York Times. So it's cultivating these relationships that will really help you understand, you know, where you're going next. So these are really important. And the things, you know, that I asked my mentors, what is a question that you wish you would have asked before taking this job? What is a question? What should you have asked? What did you not even know to ask, right? How much money should I ask for? They don't teach money in schools, at least when I was in school. So you had no idea, and there's no transparency about money. So how do I know if I'm getting paid appropriately? You know, where do you go to ask these questions? And what do you think about ... fill in the blanks, right? These are all questions you can ask people who are believing in you, right? And who have your best interests at heart. And 9 times out of 10, they have been where you are, okay? So these are questions that you really need to ask myself. But the real question, if you decide to take on this kind of role, is, are you ready to distance yourself from the craft to lead others or to advocate others? That is a real question. Everyone who has been on the street and gone into a leadership role or has moved into an editing role, are you ready to distance yourself from the craft? And you've got to answer that for yourself before you take that role. So I tell you, don't be afraid, right? That's hard to say. You can be afraid, right? But don't get stuck. Okay, because fear is a real emotion. It's a real thing. Don't get stuck. Don't get stuck in what's comfortable just because you're scared. You know, I say I'm not a cat lady, but I'm definitely a plant lady. So if anybody needs a plant, contact me. If you're local, if you're in Philadelphia, I learn a lot from every part of my life. But what my plants have taught me is, if you put them, I had all these plants that were on my desk. They were little tiny plants. And now they're floor plants. And I kept thinking, what the hell? Why are these plants growing the way they are? Well, I kept putting them in bigger spaces, right? And so what my plants have taught me is, if you get put in a bigger space and you are continually nurtured, you will grow to fill that space, right? I was scared of a title. I didn't even know what I didn't even know. I needed to come in and do assessment of workflows. I need to do assessment of gear. I need to figure out what the photographers need and all of those things, right? And I also need to pour back into myself. But you will grow, you will expand to fill that space. So don't be afraid of a title. You know, if you say, well, I'm not ready for that now. I'm not in a space where I can do that. Okay, that's fine, right? And maybe you go in that space later. But what I have learned by growing these plants way too big is thinking, oh, I put them in a bigger place. I nurtured them. I fed them. I gave them sunshine. So they're going to fill that space. So just keep that in mind if you're considering going into a bigger space. And you say, well, how do I grow, Denise? How do I become the sunshine? Well, you have to study the craft. You really have to study the trends. You know, if you were at the last workshop talking about AI and and what's coming and all these things. You've got to know what's happening in the industry. There are a ton of workshops, right? You know, the one I would recommend for photo editors is Kalish. I would actually recommend that for photographers in general, because it's a workshop that is really talking about editing and how you can be in the space with people you know, and articulate how to defend a photograph that you have chosen, how to communicate across desk and across the newsroom. Engage with the photojournalists, ask questions. You know, photographers, especially the photographers that you are working with, it's really important to hear their voice. You know, you have to engage them in a space where you can learn. You don't know everything, and that's okay. And that's actually a really good thing. So engage them and ask them their opinion, what their thoughts are. What were they thinking when they made this photograph or this series or this story? Really engage with them, and then take the leap, right? You can take the leap and figure out what you like about it. Does it fit you? You know, there will be some jobs that do not fit, and that's okay. You try to go to another space, or at least now you know, right? So, but if you never take that leap, you will never know if you could have grown to that space. So the reality check is the job is a lot of things. It's editing, it's curating, it's ensuring ethics, it's image rights and permissions, it's this, that, and the third, sequencing, advocacy, communicate. It's a lot of stuff, right? If you're running a department or if you're a photo editor in a newsroom, okay? So we're gonna do a quick exercise just talking a little bit about photo editing. And we're gonna make this a harmless photo editing assignment where we're just talking about lifeguard championships and nothing that is bloody or gory. So in this example, you will see no blood or bodies, dead bodies. You will see live bodies. But so these are a set of photos shot by Young Kim, who went to photograph just a daily assignment on the lifeguard championship at Wildwood Crest, right? So you've got photographs, different ideas and events. So if you are a daily photo editor and these photographs are coming in, you're looking at them, you're seeing what's coming in next. What are some of the things that you can think of right now that would guide your decision making onto what gets published? Just put them in the chat. What are some of the things, if you're thinking about publishing a package, what are some of the things that would guide your decision making on what gets published and what doesn't? Do, 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 do. What story am I telling? Repetition. Does the photo support the text order? Yes, sequencing. All this is really good. What tells the story? Visual interest, emotions, passion. Absolutely. These are all things that you have to take into consider when you are creating a package of publication. And keep in mind, you have multiple distribution points, right? So let's take my newsroom, for example. You have the print page, you have the digital website, you have Instagram, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, and you have this, that, and the other, right? There's multiple distribution points and different audiences for each one of those. So if you had to take this two choice, right? If you had to choose photo one or photo two, and let's just say the beginning of the story is about getting in the water. What photo are you choosing? Choosing one or two? Two seems to be the favorite so far. Okay, good. Good. And there's no right or wrong answer with this, right? Right. Oh, someone says, I don't see the water on one. Good point, right? Where's the context? So there's a lot of conversation that you have to have, not only with the photographer, but with where it's going with the newsroom, right? And what is the photo right after that? So sequencing is really, really important. And thank you for all that participated. And so you've got to be thinking about feedback and advocacy, providing feedback to journalists. Let me pause there. That is really critically important. And I don't do this enough with my own staff. Let me just acknowledge that. My heart is good, but my schedule is crazy, right? And so this is an area that I want to work on, is providing consistent feedback on their work whenever it's possible. And here's what I do well, though, is advocating for them in their work in spaces where they are not. And so that is something that you have to take seriously. Now, what does advocacy mean? Do I flip the table over in every meeting? No, you have to choose your battles, right? But I do speak up for their work and for them, right? If there is something that you have to take the hit on, you take the hit, and you talk to that photographer later and say, hey, this is what we need to be thinking about. This is what we need to be doing, okay? So and in some parts, and I'm not going to say this in always, but in some parts, if your team has a failure, you are involved at some point. Okay. If there is a failure with your team, what is your accountability? What did you not do to help that teammate along? Now, it could be something that's chronic and something that you can't help. That's possible. But typically, if there is a break in the chain or the inefficiency, you have to go back and look at the workflows and what's happening here. Okay, so I want to say this in my last few minutes. I think this is my last few minutes. I thought I had a timer going, but I don't. Get out of there, little thing there. Oh, no, it's going left. Okay, so I want to say this in my last few minutes of this presentation. Working with photo editors, if you are not a part of a staff, can be hard because it's really
you're
hard.
good, Denise. You have time.
Oh, do I? Okay, cool. I thought I had a little window here with the timer, but it's not. So working with photo editors can be really difficult in terms of just pinning them down, right? I was asking a friend of mine who is an independent photographer. He does not have a newsroom that he's pinned to. How do you get to a photo editor? You know, like how do you, if you need help with a story, what do you do? He's like, well, I don't know. He's like, I do the best I can. I ask a friend, I ask this, I do. Like what I'm learning is if you are independent, it is really difficult to get to work with a photo editor on stories. And so when you have the opportunity, when you go to these photo events where you meet a photo editor that you want to work with and they say, yes, let's get on a call, pin them down right away. Pin them down right away and say, that sounds great. What's available to you within the next month? Can we do in the next 2 weeks? Can we do in the next 3 weeks? What's good for you, right? If you have an opportunity to pin them down, pull your calendar out right then. Right? Because what's going to happen is that photo editor is going to talk to 58 people and say, I was supposed to call somebody and I just don't remember who, right? So pin them down when you can. Ask them what's their preference for communication. For me, I am a texter. I have 80,000 emails on any given day. So it's difficult for me to get to all the emails in a timely manner, right? Ask Polly. She emailed me about this, right? So I am not great at email. I know that about myself. Okay. So ask them like, hey, what's a good way to communicate? Is email the best choice? Do you want me to text? Should I call you? What do you prefer? And know what that publication is able to do for you. So for example, I have a staff of photographers. I'm not always able to publish independent photographer work, but what I can do is look at work. So if you say to me, Denise, I'm looking at a home to publish a story on Black mother mortality, I may not be the place for you for that. But if you say to me, Denise, I've been working on this story on Black mother mortality for 2 years, I would love to get your eyes and your opinion on it. I am here for it. That's one of the things that I love to do is photo edit. And I am an old school photo editor. I will print things out and slap them on the floor, move things around. Like I love that. And so know what your publication is able to do for you specific and be specific in your request. If you say, Denise, I need you to look at a sports story I'm working on, and I'm looking for it to, I really want to send it to, the New York Times. What are some things that I should be looking for? Be specific in your request and say, instead of saying, I just want you to look at my website. Well, what do you want me to look at your website for? Because I will look at a website and completely deconstruct it and build it back up. That may not be what you're looking for. So you have to know what you're actually requesting. Leading from where you are. You don't have to be a director of photography to be a leader. You don't have to be a managing editor to be a leader, right? You lead from whatever position you have, right? And some of that is done by assessing gaps and deficits. If you know you're a photo editor on a large staff, or you're the only photo editor on some other staff, right? Maybe it's a medium staff or a small staff, and there's a deficit in how the workflow is going, okay, you think about ways to fulfill that deficit as it benefits the visuals, right? So lead from where you are. You don't have to have a seat at the top to be a leader. You know, if you see something, and I tell my staff this a lot, if you see something I'm doing wrong, please say something. I may not know I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. Say something. I'm not going to get upset if you say something that you feel like, Denise, I don't think you made the best decision on that. And let me tell you why. And I might be like, you know what? You're right. You're right. I should not have done that, right? And sometimes I send an email to my deputy, like, I'm sending this email. He's like, Denise, don't. Don't send that email. I'm like, you sure? He's like, nope, don't do it, right? So ask, be in a position where you can, they call it managing up, right? If you are not the boss, but you work in that staff, manage up and do it in a way that is digestible, right? So when I talk to my boss, I report to the editor. How I manage up for him is we do our one-on-ones on Friday. I send him my agenda on Wednesday because I actually want answers on Friday. I don't want you to have to take time to read my agenda and figure out what I'm saying. No, by Friday, we should be coming up with some answers and some execution points, right? So I send him my agenda on Wednesday. And by the time we talk on Friday, he has had time to talk, consult the lawyers or whatever else I need, and we're putting a plan in place on Friday. So lead from the space you are, okay? It's really important to remember that. If you are leading a team, show up for your team. After this, I'm going to edit football, right? It's NFL. I'm going to edit football after I get off of this call. Show up for your team. Document them as they work. These are people who are never photographed. They're just not, because they're always on the other side of the camera. Document them, try to have fun. And let me just say, my team is sick of me taking photos. Let me just put that out there, okay? They are like, Denise, we've had enough. And I'm like, oh, but it's fun, right? They tolerate me. But at the end of the year, or when I have to put a presentation on why the team is so valuable, I have them doing the work that they love to do, okay? Show up for your team, celebrate their successes. Celebrate them. If it means you're buying an extra couple muffins, that's what it means. Okay, so find a way to celebrate and encourage your team. And you're not always going to do everything, but try if you can. Okay. And here's the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Some days I look like this. Okay. I don't actually look like my professional headshot photo on any given day. I don't. I couldn't find my glasses. Lord Jesus, I was trying to watch the football game and do captions. And so I'm all over the place. I just used what worked. Okay. I don't always make the right decision. I make mistakes and I try to learn from those mistakes and move forward. I photographed a breast cancer race once, and I will never forget this family had frogs everywhere. And I was like, what is this? So I photographed them and I asked them, I'm like, what is the deal with the frogs? Like, why are y'all with the frogs? I didn't say it like that, but that was the gist of it. And they said the woman who they were walking in honor of, she died, but she loved the frog. And I was like, say more. And they said, well, frogs typically don't hop backwards. They go forward, right? So when you make mistakes, keep going forward, right? Learn from what you've made, the mistakes you've made, and continue to go forward, okay? So here's some tips that I'm leaving with you with. You may never finish your to-do list. That's okay. That is okay. Set realistic goals, okay? Try to do 2 or 3 things a day, but I'm telling you right now, if your staff has a crisis, they are going to come before your to-do list. So you may just have to flex on that. You may never finish your to-do list. That's okay. Relationships are currency. when you are making relationships, not just with the people across the newsroom, but you're making relationships with the little lady that opens your front door in your newsroom, or the coffee person, right? When you're developing relationships wherever you are, people talk to you and they tell you about story ideas, or they tell you they saw, 6 lawyers come in. You don't know what's happening, right? So develop relationships. They are currency, okay? You are support staff. And I say that with the utmost love, right? It is about the work and your team at this point, and not necessarily you. Sometimes this job is a thankless job, and I mean thankless like they may not say thank you, right? But you are doing the best that you can with what you have. You hope that, when my staffers are like, Denise, how are you? I'm like, I'm great. Like, I'm so happy to get a how are you, right? Because a lot of times you are just moving, okay? Take a deep breath before you send that email. You know that email that's getting ready to cuss out 18 people? Take a minute, take a beat, take a breath before you send that email. Listen more than you speak. It is really important to listen to the photographers you're working with, right? It's really important. Listen to the photographers you're working with, listen to the bosses that you report to. Sometimes you have to listen, develop a plan, and then come back. Sometimes if I speak too soon, it's problematic. Okay. Over communicate when you can, right? Sometimes I'll leave a note in Slack, an email, a text, right? So I just want to make sure you guys all got it. Over communicate when you can. And give yourself what you need. Be honest with yourself. Denise, you are not good with text. You are not good with email. That's okay. That's all right. We are working on it. That is a growth area. Find something to do. Get yourself a hobby. You cannot do this job 24/7. It's too hard. It's too hard. Go roller skating, do crochet, run, yoga. I don't care what you do, but find something to do. I tell my staff when I am in the forest, y'all. I am walking. Do not call me unless somebody is in jail or hurt. And they're like, we got it. Okay. So find a hobby to do. Find something that is not photography. Self-care is very important. And I am not great at this, right? I'm still learning how to do that. Schedule your breakdowns. Sometimes this job will break you to tears. And I have been broken in this job for various reasons. And I don't actually have time to cry right now. But when this shift is over, I'm gonna get some chocolate. I'm gonna get a ginger ale or something, and I'm gonna have this breakdown, okay? And then get back and return. So sometimes you need to tap out and take a break. And the most important thing is do not fall into negativity. You cannot create from a space of chaos and negativity. It's really difficult. And so you see a lot of times people are walking around and they are negative, and they're upset about a puppy photo, and you're like, well, damn. Okay, I can't help you. You're upset about a puppy photo, right? So you've got to figure out how you can create from a space that's not negative. All right, and then just go forward and continue to be brilliant. We need you guys so much, and so I just want to leave you with the necessity of your work. It's so important, not just like to democracy, but photographers don't always hear how important they are, and you really, really are. And photo editors, I see your hustle. So thank you guys so much, and I will take whatever questions you have.
Wow, Denise, spoken like a true Thea. Like you are in your Thea era, because that was just yeah, because I mean, just so much wisdom that, I mean, it's like beyond advice, it's like wisdom, and yeah, so I see now why you have been such an amazing mentor to Polly. And yeah, so it's been really lovely hearing you talk about your journey, which is also so nice as a reminder that like we all start from somewhere and that success doesn't happen overnight. So thank you for so vulnerably sharing with us your entire journey and the challenges that you faced. And oh boy. That's my dad, abuelo. Okay. But anyway, so I'm gonna start off with kind of a like intense question, but I feel like, Thea can handle it.
Please ask me anything.
And also, I'm so sorry, but is this a picture of who is on this computer?
So that's my goddaughter,
Aw.
who she's 5. She might have been 4 in that picture, but sometimes I'm like on my laptop and she calls me auntie. Auntie, we need to play now. And I'm like, okay, we do. And so I was on the floor playing, and then she was playing me. So she's imitating me in that photo.
I love it. I'm a mom, and a lot of some of the advice you were saying, I was like, wow, this just like translates across all areas of life, not just like the photo world, which is really important to remember because sometimes our work life and life get very intertwined. So
Blurred.
wonderful reminders. Okay, so let's jump right into kind of we'll work backwards. So you mentioned earlier how you didn't have that confidence earlier on in your career. So how did you grow your confidence and navigate a new space that isn't totally diverse? And then someone also said, I've been thinking a lot about how photojournalism seems to still have this culture of hazing, tough love, and machismo. I have experienced some real during my career, and I have resolved to be a bigger person and nurturing leader. It's so demoralizing to see young photojournalists today going through what I consider to be abuse and harassment. It's generational trauma. How do we fix this broken culture? So 3-part question. How did you develop your confidence and navigate these spaces that weren't always so welcoming and still aren't always so welcoming? So
I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, but what I did, I celebrated what I did do well. One thing I did well was working across desk, and I worked well within our staff. So in Indiana, they asked me to teach people how to use their cell phones for video. They actually said they were going to bring somebody in to teach this, and I was like, what sucker is going to do this? And they're like, Denise, we heard you had teaching experience. I was like, Father God, okay, yes, I will do this, right? So I knew that I needed to break it down for photographers, right? Because I didn't understand it. And what I could do was do the research. And so I went to every Apple store, Genius Bar, right? And so I got this information. I was able to tell it to our staff, right? Like, does this make sense? I was asking questions. So I celebrated what I did well, right? And I have no shame as it relates to questions. So there are so many things that I just did not know. Like, I don't shoot sports well. I shot sports back then, but I wasn't, I wasn't fantastic at it. I did it because that's the shift they gave me. But what I did do well was come back and advocate for the work or advocate for my colleagues' work, right? And so I would ask the staffers, how do I shoot baseball? And they'd be like, for God's sake. And I'm like, well, I just don't know. And so they would teach me, right? I've had really good colleagues over the years. And so they would teach me how to do these things. So I celebrated on what I did well, and I asked questions about what I didn't do so well. So that's the first part. What was the other part of that?
the other part, and if you want, you can stop the share so we can see everyone, even though I love that picture so much. But the other part was, we're all in this together, especially when it comes to like solutions and stuff. But how do you feel like we can sort of continue to address the harmful culture of the visual media industry in terms of kind of the lone wolf, machismo, competition, and especially in spaces where women, non-binary photographers, and people of color may still not feel like accepted, heard, seen, taken seriously.
I hate to be the one to tell you, but there's going to have to be more women and people of color in these roles. And I think the other thing, so I'm in my 40s, right? And so what I've seen a lot of is generational gap in terms of communication. So I was on the hazing end, right? This is what I received as a young journalist, but I can't push that down to the new journalists because they don't respond to that. And so you have to learn who you're talking to. Now, my staff is very diverse. How I speak to my veterans is very different on how I speak to my youngins, or youngins probably is not the politically correct word, but you get what I'm saying. My less experienced staff. So my veterans, it's very direct. This is what I need done, da 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 da. And they speak to me like that. And I'm like, great, we've got an understanding, let's move on. But I have to actually sit with some of my younger staffers or younger people that I deal with, interns perhaps, and say, hey, let's kind of talk about what's going on. How do you feel about that? What do you think you need to do better? You know, and really have a more in-depth conversation. So it's knowing who you work with and acting accordingly. It's really that simple. Some people do not receive information in the way that you do. And so you have to act accordingly to how they receive it, right? If I tried that same kind of conversation with some of my veterans, they'd be like, Denise, I don't have time for this. I'm like, you're right. You know, so you have to act accordingly to the people that you're working with. And that comes with getting to know your staff. And you're not, and you still won't do it all the way right. You know, but also ask the hard questions like, hey, am I talking in a way that you guys can understand it? What is it that you need from me? You know, I give anonymous surveys sometimes, and sometimes like the responses are so funny to me. But they're like, Denise, this is garbage, don't do this again. I'm like, okay, cool. You know, so it's like if you give an anonymous survey, they may feel more open to saying, I don't like how you do that. I don't like how the newsroom does that. And as far as the industry, that is why having mentors are so important, because I could go to my older mentors and say, hey, this person is harassing me. This does not feel good. What should I do? Right. And then they can help you navigate that situation.
Polly, I know we have more questions, but just really quickly, I wanted to say that I think just listening to you, what we can all take away is one of the many things we can take away is like, I love how you're not afraid to be vulnerable, like sending an anonymous survey to people who could directly comment on like how I'm doing. No, thank you. Nope. Don't want to know.
But you
So
have
I
to
love
know.
that.
You have to know because
Yeah.
like, how do you know? There's a lot of things that I make mistakes on. And so I want, what I noticed with the younger generation is they will not correct me in real time. They will not be like, Denise, this is trash. No, this whole thing is trash. The idea is trash. Throw it away. They're not doing that. They might come back in a week or two and be like, I really don't agree with that idea. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. Right. So I have to adjust who I am and how I receive and give out information. And those anonymous surveys, I don't give them often, every now and again, but especially when I don't feel like I'm connected with the staff, like I'm not hearing from them, I'm not, you know, something's wrong. When they get too quiet, something's wrong. So I'll send a survey and be like, okay, let's figure out what's going on. I need them to talk to me.
I love all of this. So there's some questions here that are relating to advice for people who've never worked with an editor or sequencing and whatnot. I'm gonna hold off on answering those because our next class will really dive into that. So if you don't see your answer being addressed here, your question being addressed here, don't worry, because literally our next class is literally talking about the photographer and photo editor relationship, and we're gonna have a photographer and a photo editor in the class. So if you don't see your answer, if you don't see your question being addressed, we're not ignoring you. We're saving it for the next class where we can get to these other questions for Denise. So with that said, you mentioned here about just like like some of the, I love this part actually, that people aren't necessarily just ignoring you. Somebody in the chat commented about how like photo editors have this reputation of being soulless or mean or whatever because they can be very blunt or may never hear from them or whatever. So what advice for you specifically on people to reach out to you to get insight from you, whether it's like feedback on their websites, like you said, to be specific and what you prefer your communication style, but any no's, like do not completely general, do not do this.
Do not
to
reach
people.
out on every social media thing, right? Because that's going to scare me, number one. But secondly, just keep in mind the amount of content and people we're dealing with on a daily basis and just be patient. I had one guy I swear to you. And I was like, okay. He sent me a postcard every week. Every week he sent me a postcard, and the front of the postcard was an image of his, and the back of it was like his name, and just wanted to say hello or whatever. I got like 6 of these gorgeous postcards, and I swear I was like collecting them. I was like, let me call this man. And I called him and asked him for coffee. I was like, do you want to go to coffee? Like I just thought it was just such a subtle way of being persistent. And it's typically not that we're ignoring you. It's just there's so many things going on. And also it's the timing. Like if you send me a bunch of stuff during the election, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Um, just the subtle persistency. If you say, Boiselle told me to give you a call, put that in the title. If you have somebody that actually told you to call me, 9 times out of 10, that person sent me a text and said, hey, I have somebody reaching out to you. So put that in the title, because I'm going to go to that first, right? Oh, boys, let me see what's going on here, right? So that's helpful for us to know. If it's a cold call, you can always say in the email, like, hey, I'm looking for an edit. If it's not you, can it be somebody on your staff? Like, it really just depends on what you're looking for, but just be very specific in your ask. But don't do like my LinkedIn, my Instagram, my Facebook, Twitter, both of my emails. Like I'll be like, what's happening, right? So if you just send me an email, yeah, I'm scared, I'm nervous. If you just send me an email and just a reminder, a gentle reminder, that usually works for me. Not everybody is like that, some photo editors are different. So you just need to ask them, especially if you run into them face to face, you ask them like, hey, what's the best way, to communicate?
No, I think that's very, very good advice, especially the note of just being mindful of like where the person is that you're reaching out to and the timing. Here in the
Exactly.
US, like you mentioned, there's the US elections, or if you were in the East Coast, the floodings in the Northeast, like
Exactly.
so it's like being very mindful. If they're based internationally, think about what's happening in international news, breaking news that may be affecting their response time, and be, mindful that we are all human, like you said,
Exactly.
navigating so many different things. Is that in the same breath how you would give advice to people looking for a mentor? Because you mentioned
Yeah.
mentorship and having somebody to advocate for you. Any advice on that?
I would say again, be specific. Me and Achilles' relationship, I was like 19 when I met that woman, right? That's a whole different level. She's like in my family at this point. So it's like, if you're looking for a mentor, because you're working on a project, let's say, be specific. I'm working on this project. I see this is your specialty. It looks like is this something that you can do? When I came to Philadelphia, I wanted a woman journalism executive who did not work in my newsroom. And so I met this person, and I was very specific. She's like, well, what is it that you're looking for? I was like, I need somebody to talk to maybe once or twice a month. I'll buy the wine and the French fries. She was like, sold. Right. So I was like, I just need 45 minutes of your time every now and again just to make sure I'm on the right track. So I was very specific in my ask. And also, like, when you can't make it, say that too. Or, if something should happen, like it, and if she had said no, I would have said, this is what I'm looking for. Can you recommend someone else? Right. And it's a limited amount of time. I'm just, for the first 6 months, this is what I'd like to do. It's a bad analogy to dating, right? Like if you guys click or not, because there's also that. But you have to be really kind of honest with yourself and honest with that person, whether this is working or not. And if it's not, say so. Like, don't just stay in a bad mentorship because you asked, right? Say like, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. And, our time has come to an end. Figure out how to make the breakup, but don't stay because you were the one that initiated it if it's not working.
Right. Denise, you have the most amazing metaphors. Like when you mentioned the plant metaphor, like 10 people, we were just like riffing off of it. So yeah, you are golden with that.
If you need a plant, I am your lady. Let me know.
And the frog. Yeah, the frog. We love the frog, the plant, the fork. In fact, your metaphors were so good that there was a point when you were like, don't call me. I'm in the forest. I was like, yeah, the forest. I thought it was a metaphor at first. And I was like, oh, she's literally saying like
Literally,
on vacation. I was
you
like,
know,
how do I get to the forest?
it's so funny because I was not a nature person. I just was not. And 2020 happened. I live in the city and there was helicopters every night. And they were blowing up ATMs at that time. So it was like explosions all day, helicopters all day. And I was losing it. I was like, this is not going to work. And somebody took me to a local forest here. It's called the Wissahickon. And we just went on a walk and I couldn't hear anything. And I was like, this is why people love nature. This is fantastic. And so I started doing this hiking because I could breathe. So find your place.
Find your forest.
Yeah,
That's
find your
awesome.
forest. Yes.
Okay, so when you made the transition, we have a couple questions that are within this theme. When you made the transition from photographer to editor, how did you communicate that role change and market yourself with this new title? And how do you like even promote your work as a photo editor? What does that look like?
I don't know if I made like a market change, right? Like I you can find roles for photo editors, right? You can find DOPs and all that kind of stuff, but it found me at the time. And I'm not sure there is a way to market yourself other than word of mouth. And people who are knowing you that say, hey, Denise does this thing. You may want to contact her. So that's a great question. And, at the time, I don't know if Kevin Martin still has one, but at the time he had a great website that showed like the pages he edited and all these kind of things. My website does not show all those things. But if you are looking to do this work, I would suggest getting involved in photo editing at a smaller level if you can. Just get your foot in the door, and then you will elevate it with your behavior and your knowledge.
Going on to the next question, there's one here about when a story is happening locally, like, here in the States, there is the flooding and the hurricanes, or if it's becomes something that may be a national story that other outlets, major wires, maybe AP, AFP, or whoever bring in photographers. How do you approach as an editor to ensure that your local team still maintains access and gets what they need?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think that goes back to relationships. The industry is not that big, truly. And if you're a photo editor, it's even smaller. And so there's a lot of times where I may reach out to a photo editor at the New York Times, like, hey, who do I need to talk to about this? Or the photographer might know, right? Like I have a guy who's been working here like 42 years, I think. And I'm like, hey, what's your thoughts on this? Like, who am I supposed to reach out to? But it's really conversation. And it's really building that relationship. So when you do have questions, someone or somewhere to go to. And so that's, ensuring that we have access. It might be a phone call. I will search somebody on LinkedIn and be like, hey, this isn't the guy, but he looks like he's connected to the guy. I'm going to reach out. So it's sometimes it's cold calling. Sometimes, if I need something from a television station, I might call my friend who's a broadcaster and be like, hey, who do I call about this? So it is a lot of almost reporting, like where do you go? Who do you call? And so you use those same reporting skills you had as a photographer to track down that access point.
I love that. And this next question in particular, I think is really important here. You spoke about having to distance yourself from photography and that identity. I don't want to say crisis, but just like those questions that you're asking about your creative identity in that sense. Do you miss that facet of your work? Do you like
Oh
still
God,
pick up a
every
camera
day.
every now and then? And how has your work as an editor continued to feel creative? Do you have room to make photos and videos of your own?
That's a great question. I work at a guild paper, and so I do not have, I can't take photos for our paper traditionally. And now there's some exceptions in there. But I started doing a photo a day, I think the day I started editing, because I knew I was going to lose it if I didn't do something. And I think I'm on like day 4,000 and whatever, I don't know. And every day is not a great photo. So please don't go there and be like, oh, this is going to be amazing. It's not. It literally is just something that keeps me looking for photos. But I miss it every day. I miss it every day because I loved talking to people and I loved getting in communities and being in that space. And I still do shoot on occasion, right? I might do the photo you saw in the beginning of the braids. I was supposed to be doing headshots for somebody's company, but this woman moved in a way. I was like, do you model? She was like, yes. I was like, let's do some things, right? So it's like every now and again the opportunity presents itself where I can play with the camera, and I love to do that. And so how do I create that excitement now? As a photo editor, I create it with the staff. So for example, 2020, everything was breaking loose, and one of the young videographers was like, Denise, I'm really tired of this like black dead bodies, and every time we show black people, they're dead, and all of this chaos. Can we do something on joy? I was like, say more. So we did this project called Wildest Dreams, and that tickled me, right? That tickled me, where we're giving the staff an opportunity to do something on joy. That's not something you see very often, specifically black joy. And so you can create a space where you can give the staff something to do that is different and unique and powerful. So it's also a space where if you're working with a photographer and you're coaching them on what they need and what they don't have, when they get that to that space where the story feels complete, there is a celebration. And I know Andrea is going to talk about that, but you find joy in bringing people to their next level, right? But you have to find something within yourself that you can celebrate, because it is not the same as you creating, right? So I celebrate with my staff. When we win the regional Emmys, yeah, that's great. I'm celebrating with them, right? But what is it that's going to sustain you to continue to do this work? And part of it is continuing to learn, right? So you should not have your staff do anything that you cannot do or would not do, right? So I've been trying, and I know if a staffer's watching me, they're like, Denise, you've been saying that for a year, but I'm still in the fight of learning how to fly a drone, right? Like, so learn something new that's going to continue to tickle you, right? And as you are supporting your staff or the photographers that you work with, their success will become your joy. And so I think that's really, really
Oh,
important.
yeah, I see you, Polly. We're like, oh, we both went, oh, at the same time. Their success will be your joy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, we've got one. I think this is a great question to end on. And again, you've given us so many amazing takeaways today. But so this question comes from Corinne Chen, who is in the audience and who spoke yesterday. She's the director of news talent for recruitment at the Associated Press, just for those
She's
who
amazing.
yeah, in the audience, just to give some context to her question. I think it's important to know who she is, because she says, can you talk more about the importance of getting more women and people of color into photo leadership? I was one of those people who could have never imagined putting down the camera, smiley face, but it's so important to have better representation in leadership, and it can be lonely. So what are your thoughts on that as we close this incredible conversation?
Yeah, I think that it's something that you really just need to consider. I did not want, this was not my game plan when I started doing, I wanted to be a photographer forever. No video, no nothing. That's all I wanted to do. And I had one of my mentors tell me, and he spoke very plain. He's like, Denise, the industry needs you in this space. I was like, they don't need me. They got plenty of people in this space. He was like, listen to what I'm telling you. They need you in this space. They need you to advocate for this work and for people who are coming behind you. And I'm like, they'll be all right. I fought it tooth and nail. But now that I'm in it, I can see and I can understand. So if this is something that you think that you can do, and this is not a space where you can be shy in, right? There's some flex in here where you have to, as they say, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, right? You got to know what battles to fight. But it is a fight, because you're not only fighting for the photographers, you're fighting for their work. And so you have to speak the language of executives and the language of photography and blend it into advocacy. But it's really important that, and not just Black and brown people are in these positions, people who are fair, right? You don't have to say to yourself, well, I'm not Black or brown, maybe I shouldn't go. No, 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 no. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you are aware and if you are fair and you can advocate for visual journalism and visual work and people who don't look like you, right? All of those things are super important, and there's just not enough of us, and there's in the space right now. And so the more people we have who have this awareness, right, the better off our journalism, our democracy, all these things, right, that come in. Because I can tell you there are photos that come in and I'm like, absolutely not. No. And let me tell you why, right? And so you have to be able to tell somebody the why. So Corinne, I see you. I love you. You have to stick together because this job is really, really, really hard. And if you don't have anyone that you can say, I can call Corinne and be like, girl, look, let me tell you what's going down, right? So she understands that, right? And so not only having other people in this position that look like you, but people who are aware and who are advocating for the things that you are advocating for, but you guys come together and build each other up. So when you feel like you have been hit in the mouth and you are laying on the ground, just looking at the plants, you have to call a helpline that will help you stand up again because we need each other. And so you don't have to be a particular person to do this job, but you have to be able to advocate and you have to be able to articulate the why. Why is it this photograph? Why is it this photographer? Why do we give this photographer a shot? You have to be able to advocate that. This photographer does not have enough experience. That's okay. Let's give them a shot. Let's figure out if they can do it. If you're not in that room, no one else will speak for them. So you have to be able to speak for them.
Listen, taking us to church or wherever you go for it. Oh, absolutely. I always tell people like these editors, your favorite people that you call over and over again. There was at one point, it was your first time working with them.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so you gave them a shot. At one point, you gave them a shot, and that became your go-to. So yes, I mean,
Don't forget that.
You
Don't
just took
forget
us
that.
to church. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank
you
you.
guys. I
And
appreciate
somebody
you so
mentioned in
much.
the chat, this has been so affirming. Corinne said you're such an inspiration. We need more editors and humans like you. Yes, we do.
Humans.
Truly. Humans.
Well, I
I'm like
appreciate you guys.
moving to Philadelphia, so we
Oh, sorry.
no, I was just like moving to Philadelphia because so we can hang out. That's probably not one way you want to like make friends with editors is by moving to their home city.
Become
But
a
I would
neighbor,
love to
right?
hang out, Denise.
Well, I would love to give you a plant, so let me know.
Well, you should scroll back up and see what Ira said in response to that metaphor. I was like, why are my plants dying?
Well, you guys are in a treat for this next session. Andrea, I wish I could see it, but I have to do a football game, so I can't wait to see what you guys do. I will watch it on the flip side, but love you guys so much. I'm so very proud of you guys. Thank you for the invite. I really do feel honored. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for summarizing it up for us too.
Yeah. Denise did it. We don't.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you everyone who joined us for Denise's class. Again, if you missed any part of that, that will be recorded. You love the class, guess what? You are here because it's free, because our incredible partner, Photo Wings, helps facilitate these type of programs around the world to provide free resources for storytellers like you to enjoy from our incredible speakers.